Alright, well, hi everybody, I'm Jacob. I'll be talking about electoral voting. And the Electoral College is a system of voting that was created by the Founding Fathers because they were afraid of the masses becoming too powerful. Masses meaning majority of the people. They made it to where smaller states can become equally as powerful in the voting elections as the much larger states. And my main claim is electoral voting provides an unequal distribution of votes in the presidential election. I'll support that with 3 secondary claims. In the United States elections, numerous people vote each time. However, the voting of U.S. citizens on a national count does not really matter, which brings me to my first claim. Popular vote plays no role in the national count. For example, in the 2000 presidential election, Democrat Al Gore won the popular vote by over 500,000 votes. Despite that success though, he lost in the electoral vote and the presidency to Republican George W. Bush. Now how is that possible? According to Caroline Jefferson Jenkins, the president of the League of Women Voters in the United States, the popular vote does not matter in a national count because elections are based on the voting of the Electoral College. In order to win an election, you must win 2/3 of the votes of the Electoral College. So majority of voters' votes do not count. Which brings me to my second claim. The winner-takes-all method does not provide equal distribution among electors. Now, the winner-takes-all method is where electoral votes are based off population vote of each state. So for example, New York, if the majority of them voted Democrat, then all of those votes from New York from the Electoral College would go to the Democrats. So the Electoral College is distributed among the states based on population. Each state, however, usually sides with a certain political party. For example, California usually votes democratically, while Texas votes Republican. With that being said, a Republican politician campaigning will not go to a Democratic state and vice versa, as said in Problems with Electoral College. States that have certain biases toward a party create unfair advantage in the presidential election, causing more votes not to count. All the Republicans in California and the Democrats in Texas will not be counted eligible in the election. Now, earlier in my presentation, I mentioned that the Electoral College was created to ensure smaller states equal amount of power in the election, which brings me to my third claim. The voting power for each state varies depending on state size. So electoral voters are accounted for the number of people in each state. For example, California having 40+ million has a total number of 55 electors, while North Dakota having only 400,000 people have a total number of 3 electors. Many states also have a total of only 3 electors, including North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, and etc. These states in total do not come close to California's massive amount of electors, giving smaller states still a disadvantage in the Electoral College. And in conclusion, the Electoral College violates the right of one man, one vote policy that the Constitution originally tried to enforce, and that's all.
All right, well, the proposition is clearly identified, and it works fine. I think that that's the strongest point in the beginning of the argument. You have a little bit of a preview of what's coming up, but the secondary points are not as distinct as they need to be. And then when you get to the body of the speech, there was only one really clear transition. When you went from the second to the third point, I thought that it was suddenly clear what the argument was that I was hearing on that third point. The other 2 points all seemed like it was narrative about what goes on without telling me what inference I'm supposed to be drawing about those things. And in a couple of places you get to issues about fairness, and fairness arguments, of course, are value claims. And so when you make an argument about something being unfair or fair and you're using it to support a claim of fact, that's problematic. Stick to the argument that some people their votes are not counted, or that their votes are given greater weight than other people's votes. And I think you're sticking more to something that is the factual issue that we're talking about. You have the one example of Gore versus Bush. That's fine. I think there are probably other examples that you could point to, even hypotheticals. Some of the factual data needs to be clarified. Number of electoral votes required. You say it takes 2/3 of the electoral votes to be elected. Well, there are 535 electoral votes. You need 270, so that's half. So where the 2/3 number comes from, I'm not quite sure. There are some places, by the way, that divide up the electoral vote by districts or by like a proportional system. There are maybe 3 or 4 states that have done that, and there's been a recent proposal. There are like a whole bunch of states that are talking about making the votes of their electors dependent upon the national outcome, not just on the state outcome. I think that you need a little bit more background on that so that we've got a contemporary argument that's going on here. The comparison, the example of Texas and California, I think is pretty reasonable, suggesting that people's votes don't count. But I wonder, well, when all is said and done, isn't that the case for everybody who's on the short end of the stick? You know, your votes didn't count because I see people doing that all the time, saying that all the time. Don't blame me, I didn't vote for him. You know, that kind of thing. In essence, that's true. Anytime your candidate is not the winner, your vote didn't count in that situation. So how is that different for the Democrats in Texas or the Republicans in California? There's got to be a reason why that matters a little bit more. I was also a little bit confused with the data that you had in all the states with 3 votes. You made it sound like they were being underrepresented. The argument that I usually hear is that they are overrepresented. You get 3 votes and you've got 500,000 people in your state, and that's the equivalent of, I don't know, 1 electoral vote. You figure it out per person what the vote is. There's a proportional representation there, but for some states they get 1/3 as much power. Like California, for instance, my voting power in Wyoming would be 4 times greater because I'd get more electoral votes for the number of people that voted versus California, where you get X number of electoral votes, but you've got 40 million people that it represents. So I kind of thought that you had that part of the argument a little bit backwards. Thought you did a pretty nice job speaking to the audience and kind of explaining the historical context of those things. I do think there's still some value arguments that are kind of underlying the point that you're trying to make there. All right, thank you.